Part 9, The Last Light in a Dying Sky. The rains never came that year. Even the sky seemed exhausted, a pale, washed-out blue stretched thin across Sudan's endless horizon. The desert wind carried more sand than breath, and every gust rattled through the ruined villages like a reminder of what used to stand there. In places where laughter once echoed, all that remained were the hollow frames of burned houses and the faint outlines of footsteps that led nowhere. And yet, people were still living among the ashes. Not many, but some. Those who refused to leave their land, even if the land had forgotten how to give life back. In the ghost towns of West Darfur, a few families rebuilt their shelters from the broken bones of their homes. A door that survived the fires, a metal pole scavenged from the ruins, a piece of cloth once used as a prayer mat, now repurposed as a roof. Leaving is dying twice, an old woman said, her voice as cracked as the earth. This is where my children were born. This is where they are buried. I will not abandon them again. She cooked what little grain she had left in a pot blackened by fire. At night she slept in a room without walls, beneath a sky that knew every secret of the war. Across the desert, far from the burned villages, small pockets of survivors gathered in hidden camps known only by whispers. These weren't official camps. There were no aid workers, no water stations, no tarps stamped with international logos. Just humans, trying to remain human. They built fires in pits to hide the flame from patrolling militias. They buried their dead quickly, before the heat could steal their dignity. They shared water, a cup at a time, and taught the children to walk quietly, speak softly, hide quickly. Every day was the same game of survival. Wake before the sun, move before the trucks, live before the world forgets you again. Some days they succeeded. Some days they didn't. Khartoum no longer belonged to the living. The rivers still flowed, the bridges still stretched across the Nile, but the heartbeat of the capital had stopped a long time ago. War had turned the city into a vast shadow, split between whoever carried the bigger gun. Cats walked across broken windowsills. Dust settled on abandoned taxis. A child's school notebook lay open on a street corner, the last sentence incomplete, frozen in time. Every so often, a lone figure wandered through the ruins. They weren't searching for food or safety. Those things had vanished a long time ago. They were searching for memories, for proof that this city was once alive. One man found his shop, or what was left of it. He picked up a rusted key from the ground, the same key he used every morning for almost 20 years. He held it as if holding the past. Then he slid it into his pocket and walked away. There was nothing left to lock. While Sudan burned, the world made speeches. Long, winding speeches filled with promises and condolences, layered in diplomatic wording and comfortable distance. They said, "We are monitoring the situation." They said, "We call for calm." They said, "We urge restraint." But no one said, "We will stop it." In global halls lit by chandeliers, Sudan became a topic, not a tragedy. A line item. A side conversation, something to discuss after lunch, but not something worth bleeding for. A diplomat once whispered off camera, "There is no strategic value in Sudan. That is the truth." And with that truth, millions of lives became negotiable. In the makeshift desert camps, no one celebrated birthdays anymore. Time had lost meaning. Years passed like a slow-moving sandstorm, visible but always out of reach. Children couldn't remember their age. Some didn't even remember their names. A little boy sat under a tattered tent, drawing a cake in the sand with one candle on top. "Why one candle?" a volunteer asked gently. The boy shrugged. "One is better than zero." In a world stripped to its bones, that was enough. Every week, caravans of refugees headed toward borders that rarely welcomed them. They carried nothing but plastic bags filled with fragments of their lives. A woman walked 27 days to reach a border crossing, only to be told, "No more refugees today." She collapsed into the dirt. Not because she was tired, she had long passed the point of tiredness. She collapsed because she finally realized the world was not waiting for her. It never had been. Behind her, hundreds more were still coming. Some barefoot, some injured, some carrying children, some carrying memories too heavy to speak. And yet, in this darkness, there were sparks of light. A doctor in a ruined clinic who refused to leave his patients. A teacher who created a school under a thorn tree. A grandmother who told stories every night to keep her grandchildren alive through fear. Youth who documented everything on smuggled phones so the world would have proof. And somewhere east of Darfur, a small community rebuilt a well, brick by brick, without tools, without machines, without help. Just determination. When water finally burst from the ground, spraying into the air like liquid hope, they didn't cheer. They cried. Tears of survival, tears of unbelief, tears of life returning to a land that had forgotten it. Part 9 is not a chapter of peace. It is not a chapter of victory. It is not the moment when the world wakes up. It is the moment that Sudan, broken but breathing, stands on the edge of a future no one can predict. The sky is red tonight, from dusk, from fire, from sunset. But there is a small light on the horizon, a flicker, a heartbeat, a promise. Not made by the world, but made by the people who refuse to disappear. This is Sudan, still standing, still fighting, still alive.